it will be up to these two because most likely they will be running the jungle carry for each of their respective teams, and whoever wins the jungle is going to win this game.
Wow. I mean, you know, when you say that a lot of times, I try to find a way to prove you wrong, Rome. But honestly, I feel you're quite on point here. Like whoever dominates that jungle gets that lead, they're going to be able to posture, and that's the kind of play style they have as well. They're going to be able to exploit weaknesses, and I think you're quite right. What do you see as like the dominating type heroes that these guys might pull out for those positions?
Like, especially on the side of Cerberus, you know, you have Leon, who's excellent at playing skill shot heroes and higher cap heroes that would have a lot more depth into them should you execute their abilities and their combos right. But on the side of SK Gaming, they do favor that late game composition. This is one of the teams that knows exactly how to play conservatively in the early game, making a lot of those quick rotations up to that lane. And once you get to that later later times within the game itself, they start to really shine. This is when their compositions start playing well overall, and this is when their positioning during the team fights really highlight how much they know and how much synergy they have with each other.
Yeah, I think a really good point there. SK, they tend to bide their time, they don't make too many mistakes, and then when it matters the most, take that really good fight. So it looks like they're gonna have Raph on that Cruel. He got some good work done on that hero yesterday. We'll see what he can do today, and it's gonna be so paired up with the Fortress. It's gonna be the Adagio here.
Yeah, so you know, just looking at this right now, Gangstar Cerberus, they will have that early game composition. They will have to be able to push as much as they can, just due to the fact that once you get those weakness stacks onto Blackfeather, you don't really have to die them anymore. They don't have that range coming out on the side of Cerberus. So what SK Gaming has to do is pick up a laner that is able to like dish out a lot of poke damage, and once they do that, they can just wait for the team fights to come into their side.
Nice, and that plays into what you were kind of talking about before as far as play style. Only a couple seconds left here. What's it gonna be? Glaive locked in right at the last second. So these guys, I mean, talk about beef right here. This is team beef. You got your Finn, your Cruel, your Glaive. It is some heavy hitters.
Yeah, so you know, I do feel like with the side of SK Gaming, they don't have that poke that we were just recently talking about. You know, you throw that Glaive into a Blackfeather, you will have a tough time unless you're able to be that much further ahead. But with that Adagio, that buff composition coming out, Blackfeather is going to be doing an enormous amounts of damage.
Oh man, this is going to be really great, guys. We've loaded into the house to unfold, so without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the game, and we'll toss it over to our casters, Action Jackson and X-Scoundrel. Take it away, guys.
All right, we're finally here at the day of the semifinals, third, fourth place match, and finals. I'm super excited to see who can pull out the win here. Looking back at the first qualifier that we had for the spring season, Gankstars Cerberus, one of the teams playing in this match, did take home the victory with first place, so we'll have to see if they can pull off something similar again here. That said, SK, the sort of reformed SK, which is a combination of the previous Prometheus and Chimera teams, is looking pretty strong. They're going to be able to put up a good fight, I think.
Yeah, and obviously, based on what we saw yesterday, Jackson, I am so excited for this because Gangstar's had periods where they looked amazing and had periods where they looked a little bit shaky, but SK, they looked on form yesterday. Okay.
He's already looked just a little bit shaky, getting caught out there by the early gank. This is Medic doing what, of course, Glaive is so good at, those early ganks. Gotta be careful if you're on the side of Gangstar Cerberus right now.
I feel like too many people are falling for this right now. I mean, this happens with SK all the time, especially when they are running Glaive. They really like to get, you know, first 2-minute ganks off, and especially Blackfeather, where you're going to put yourself in a compromising position in that lane because you're not ranged, you are stepping up to that minion wave. You do have to be aware of how easy it is with Afterburn to set up ganks with Cruel, especially with using Cruel's heroic perk. He can just storm out of that brush into an Afterburn Blackfeather, and you can go down very quickly. And SK have managed to get very early advantages just by doing that over and over again.
Yeah, and I feel like given the fact that Medic's actually playing lane Glaive this game, you know, it ought to be a little bit more telegraphed, right? You know when Medic's in range to Afterburn you. It's not as if it's coming out of the bush blindly. And you don't have Ardent paired up or Fortress paired up with the Crow from the jungle, so it should be a little bit more difficult for them to get on top of you. Losing that early gank, definitely a bit of a mistake, I would say, from Gangstar Cerberus, but well played to SK. Off to a good start in this game, but Gankstars, they're trying to answer with a bit of aggression of their own.
Yeah, let's see if they push into this jungle right now. It's going to be the Leon on the sort of, I guess, jungle Adagio at this point. He's obviously gone for some early attack speed just to make sure that he can clear very, very quickly. I think we'll probably see him go towards an alternating current just because, you know, you want to provide a multifaceted threat, especially against a sort of a heavy melee comp that you're seeing here from, to be honest, both sides have got pretty heavy investments in melee damage dealers, but at least having a ranged damage dealer who is going to focus on being able to deal damage, that may prove a little bit more useful for Gangstar's Cerberus as they go forward. If you go straight for that Shatter Glass, you are kind of putting all your baskets or all your feathers into Black Feather. In the sense that, you know, won't be doing as much damage from range, and Black Feather is the one that's receiving the buffs from Adagio, and with that Shattered Glass you're healing him for more. So I think I expect to see something like an alternating current from this Adagio this time around. Oh, I say that Cream going aggressive.
Ooh, Emmer King gonna be the main target to begin with here, taking a decent chunk of damage, but look at this. Leon is able to turn around so much back on the side of SK. Kind of forces him away there. Medic was trying to set up an afterburn, but I just don't think he really had too much of an opening to go for anyone without positioning himself a bit too deep. So
Yeah,
SK playing it safe. They're not trying to pull the trigger on something they can't really follow through on, and that's
Raph
exactly what you'd expect.
Raph has seen them. He's going to run away with that heroic perk. He doesn't have the backup from his team. That could have been scary for Gankstars if the rest of SK had collapsed down there into the jungle, and they'll get away with some very cheeky counter jungling here, and SK can do nothing to answer, but Techno could be the target.
Yeah, gonna get stunned into that wall. Raph not able to stay in melee range there. He only got one stack of weakness onto Techno JJ. That's not going to be enough for a big spectral smite, and as a result they don't find the kill. Emmer King face checking the bush. He's going to take a little bit of damage due to that polite company from Cream, but not enough again for SK to really capitalize. Gankstars are doing a good job of mitigating the early pressure that we saw SK be so successful with at the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, again, I feel like SK's composition is pretty cool, but it does kind of drop off. I know Cruel does scale very well, but you're going to be relying on Cruel to get a smite off in terms of looking for an execute. Once that smite's down, oh yeah, I mean, he's going to get away with afterburn there. Once that smite is down, if you haven't taken out a really key target, you know, I really do worry about the potency of a weapon power glaive in the later stages, and especially, you know, with a Black Feather and Adagio, they can scale pretty well. Adagio will be able to put out a fair amount of damage from that ranged position. And that was my phone, which I'm going to put on mute. And they'll be able to put a lot of damage out from that ranged position, which does kind of leave SK in the rut if Afterburn is down, and if you're unable to isolate Leon.
Whoa,
Afterburn,
Cream!
well, okay, Cream.
Choosing to go for the quibble instead of just running there was, I mean, my favorite word of yesterday, but it's still one of my favorite words. Audacious, you know, it was a little bit too bold. That's going to put Gankstars in a position to maybe go for the turret here, but Raph is coming through from the jungle, getting a lot of stacks of weakness down onto Techno JJ, but without Cream there to really keep people in the fight with Polite Company and Quibble, they can't find a kill. So for now, it's just going to be that 1-for-1, and 1,000 gold lead actually going the way of Gankstars.
I think SK are really relying on two facets here, that they need to be able to hit a good afterburn, preferably on Adagio, to be honest, because, you know, Black Feather is always going to be within melee range of you, and he will have that Rose offensive eventually. So you're either going to want to be hitting afterburn onto Adagio, or you're going to be wanting to hit a pretty huge accord. You know, you want to be hitting a huge hook from Cream at some point. So those are the two areas I think we should really keep an eye on. Obviously, there is the From Hell's Heart to set up these kind of things. So there are a couple of really key skill shots that I think SK will be looking to utilize as they move through this game, and it can definitely work in their favor if they manage to get a team fight that works for them. Realistically, you're thinking they are going to spend their time applying pressure to Leon in these team fights, because Techno JJ will always be within hitting distance of them, like I said previously, and obviously he's a very slippery character with that Rose offensive.
Absolutely. Right now, Cream getting jumped on yet again. He's only level 4 right now, so actually taking a lot of damage from Leon. He's going to be able to make it back to the turret, though. Gangstar Cerberus, I mean, even went up against the early pressure of the Glaive, of the EU Kroll. They're doing a good job at the moment. Raph also forced back. Leon is really the big threat on the side of Gankstars at the moment, laying down so much hurt with the Agent of Wrath, but he's got to be careful. That's going to be him knocked back. Wrath doesn't land the Hell's Heart on Leon, but it's not going to matter. They still find the kill. Emmer King also very deep at the moment. Medic doesn't have after 10 seconds, but he does not need it to pick up that kill. Two quick ones for SK, and really that was just over-aggression coming through from Gangstar Cerberus. Techno
Too
also
aggressive.
needs to be careful right now as Wrath could use that Dead Man's Rush to jump on top of him. Techno isn't going to be followed up on by Cream either of those. So he gets back to lane. Regardless, pretty big fight for SK.
Agreed, and I said agreed in a really odd way there, Jackson. Totally agreed, though. I think Gangstar Cerberus were far too aggressive in that situation. They positioned themselves like they had the ability to turret dive, and as soon as that from Hell's Heart came off, it got a huge combination with the Quibble, which just allowed everybody the time of day to get on top of Adagio. And you saw there that immediately, as soon as Leon was stunned up, he was the target, because this is the person they want to take out. They can deal with Blackfeather later. You can kind of ignore him for a period right now. You take out Adagio first, you then in a really good situation to just move that team fight forward for yourselves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with Adagio gone, a lot of the power of the Blackfeather can't really be unlocked because he's just going to go down a bit too quickly. That said, he has finished a Serpent's Mask now, so he's going to have a bit more sustain. Obviously, super powerful item on the Blackfeather, given that you apply basic attacks when you rose offensive over people. So you can get 3 quick lifesteal attacks off. Wrath, he's going to face check right now. That was extremely bold. He's going to get back, though. Reflex block, buying him a little bit of space as Leon tries, but misses to get that Verse of Judgment down. SK on the retreat, but they make it back to the turret. Gankstars not finding the fight they were looking for there.
Look out for Cream, because there could be a good opportunity for a forced accord coming out here, especially near the turret, and they've managed to regain a little bit of life. I think as soon as that fountain is finished, this will be really good for SK, because then they can look to elongate these team fights, which I think they do really well, and they're going to go for a gold mine contest here, though.
Yeah, SK doesn't want to let this one go across. Techno jumping on the backline, but he gets hit by the From Hell's Heart. Smite does a lot of damage there, but Medic needs to finish the job. Can he do this? Stun into the wall. Techno very low, but the heals keep coming across from Leon. Medic, he's so close to going down. The reflex block saves him for the time being, but it's not going to be enough. Cream could not find the force accord to peel for his teammate in time, and he's going to go down too. It's the ace, even though Wrath was up in 1 second. Unfortunate timing for the side of SK Gaming, and the gold mine likely to go Gangstar's way as well.
Absolutely. I feel like that was a bit forced from SK. They'd already received a fairly heavy amount of punishment about 30 seconds beforehand. They then put themselves in a situation where they had to face check a brush that they had very little vision of. I think they did throw a flare down, but it was, you know, they're kind of throwing a flare into an area where they weren't expecting to see the team anyway. And that just gave a really good position for Techno JJ to get to the back line. And they just burn Wrath as soon as possible without the threat of that execute. That just gave so much time for Techno to regen with that Serpent's Mask. You saw there, and exactly what the point you made earlier, that Rose offensive keeping Techno alive, not only through the ability to dodge any form of CC and damage reduction, but also the fact that you do get that lifesteal when you use it with the Serpent's Mask. And you saw right there, he was just staying alive right until the very end, and both Medic and Cream were really struggling to deal the final blow to that Blackfeather. And I think that was a real key part there. And also you've got to remember that the Verse of Justice just wasn't up right now. Verse of Judgment just was down, so they managed to win a fight in a very enclosed situation without even having the main form of their CC.
So something interesting, probably worth talking about, and it certainly may have been influential in that last fight. Medic this game going for the Serpent's Mask, because this is the first time I at least have seen it in the VGL. It's a build that you can do, but it's not the most popular amongst these professional players. Normally, they're going for the Sorrow Blade first, or in certain circumstances, they'll be picking themselves up the Tension Bow. Cream, hang on a second, he's going to be face-checking the bush. SK, they need to have better map vision if they want to make these plays. Cream likely going to go down very quickly here. Ember King on the front line, just tanking up all the damage from Wrath and Medic. They need to back up to the turret. Things aren't looking too good for SK right now. They haven't found any good fights in quite some time. Medic also getting jumped on there. Look at Leon's damage. He's going to try and get one more attack down, but it's not quite enough. The burn picks up the kill. Wrath, he's in a bad spot too. Ember King wants to keep this one going. Can they find this? Wrath, with From Hell's Heart, is going to stun up Ember King, but the fountain keeps him alive. Gangstar's Cerberus go very ham, diving 2 turrets to pick up 2 kills and one of the turrets. Impressive plays from these guys.
Yeah, and Cream just going to use that quibble. Interesting note here, Jackson. A couple of things I want to pick up on, just on some of the things that you also mentioned. I think that the Serpent's Mask here is very clever from Wrath. This is simply because you will see a Sorrow Blade on a glaive when you're looking to burst someone. And that's usually when you're running a very burst-heavy composition. They are not running a burst composition here, Jackson. They have Cruel, and he really thrives in elongated fights. You know, he needs to build up huge amounts of stacks. He wants to get the most out of his smite. So you need to have some form of ability of keeping your glaive alive. He needs to be able to himself stay in a healthy position in a fairly elongated team fight. And you know, this is also playing into the competition that they're seeing from Gankstars, even though it's not working out for them. There's a team fight going here right now.
SK, they're very far away from safety right now. Cream extremely low. Leon does get stunned up, but the damage isn't there just yet. Afterburn finishes up the kill, but in the meantime, Medic goes down. Wrath now needs to retreat in the 1 versus 2. Techno JJ with the damage is going to be able to find that kill. Very clean, although not entirely clean ace coming through from Gangstar Cerberus. They're sitting at 10 kills to 5 and a 5,000 gold lead at only 13 minutes. Things are starting to snowball pretty heavily for that side.
Yeah, and I was about to make the point. Now, I do like the idea behind the composition that they're running for, but realistically, they need to burst someone. So the Sora Blade might have actually been a better choice. I think it's clever the way they were trying to think about it and the theory crafting that was going along in their head, but you need to burst someone because you just lose in these elongated fights. If you try and fight a Blackfeather that's receiving buffs from Adagio, and Adagio who's able to cut you backwards, and with that verse of Judgment, you know, you are going to be in a pretty sticky situation. You know, you're not... I think you're playing this wrong if you're attempting to go for the long game with the composition that you've got from SK. Glaive is not known for his ability to stay alive in team fights, especially if he's gone glass cannon build with, you know, Serpent Mask and Bonesaw, as you can see here being picked up for him. This is not something that we know that Glaive is good for. Glaive is really good for trying to, or at least setting someone up to be burst. So I can see there's two options here. They're trying to isolate Adagio with Afterburn and then have the burst from Cruel Smite, or they are just trying to play these elongated team fights. But I feel like you're trying to play against a composition that's doing it better than you, and always will do it better than you just because of the heroes that they have on their team. So, again, the theory crafting here I think is good, but it may not be the best way to approach this game state.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think... although they've got the Kroll and the Finn, who are obviously great in the late game, I think when you add Glaive to that mixture, you kind of want to be putting the pressure on early, like we saw with the initial gank up towards Techno JJ in the lane that got first blood for SK. I would have liked to see a bit more pressure put on the early game by SK and a bit more leveraging of the item builds to accommodate for that kind of a play. Now that we're moving forwards, I think it's really going to be down to Cream and Raph to win this, and that's going to be tough given that Techno JJ and Leon are strong. Here comes another fight though. Emmerking jumping right onto the back line. Techno JJ, look at this. He can just kite around the edges of the fight with that Rose offensive. Leon hasn't taken any damage yet. Medic already going to go down before anyone's taken damage. Raph, he gets jumped on. This is, I mean, that was such a whitewash. No one took damage on Gangstar's side.
So, okay.
Fountain wasn't even used by
No,
Emmerking.
exactly. So there is Crucible there for Cream, by the way, so they have the opportunity for Versa Judgment. But again, this is something that we talked about last weekend, that Leon's not going to spend his time wasting time channeling Versa Judgment because he's just going to use his buffs and his heals. My issue here is that I guess you're playing for the late game here, but again, Blackfeather does do well in the late game, especially in a buff composition, you know, like we've seen. So I kind of feel like SK have tried to play the game that Gangstar's Cerberus have set up for them, but they're not playing to their compositional strength. They're saying, okay, we've got Cruel, so why not play for late game, and we'll kind of make Glaive run a late game sustain build, but that's not what Glaive was particularly good at. You know, Glaive is good at isolating a target, bursting a target, or setting a target up to be burst. He's not good at this sort of sustain melee carry champion that you can kind of see in the form of Cruel and Blackfeather. Interestingly, about that last fight, really key point that we picked up earlier in the game. That Blackfeather Rose offensive across 3 members basically got a good half of his life back.
Hang on a second, this could be an important fight. Techno JJ Rose offensive is out of that forced accord. That's going to be Medic trying to jump onto him, though Wrath goes down first. Techno still doing a lot of damage, sustaining up. Medic does pick up the kill. Now against Leon and Emmerking, they might not turn this one around, but that's the Verse of Judgment. It was saved to the last second. It picks up the kill on the Medic. It finds Cream too, and that is going to be game 1 of the series, going to Gangstar's Cerberus in pretty dominant fashion.
Yeah, because he saw the Crucible was saved for Versa Judgment, but I don't think the communication was there right there between Raph and Cream, because Raph was like, I got to Afterburn away. and unfortunately ended up going down like that as well. So, yeah, I just think the real core problem here for SK was they picked a composition that could do very well if they got rolling and if they put potentially Glaive on a Sorrow Blade and look for him to be more bursty. But they tried to play the same game as Gangstar's Cerberus with a composition that I feel just did it worse. You know, they don't play Glaive as a late game sustain melee carry, just not what he does. Glaive is an isolating, bursty champion. You build his items to burst more quickly with. You know, the build that they ran with him is saying, I'm aiming to get lots of auto attacks off in a team fight. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen. So don't do it. But yeah, there we go. I think that was the core issue there, Jackson. And maybe we'll see SK shape it up because we know Raph is a fantastic Glaive player. And I'm not going to assume I know better than Raph on how to play Glaive. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well,